much for being a part of our Frame of Mind series. I'm Ainslie Fortune, and I lead our account leadership team here at Cactus. As an ad agency, we've been working in the mental health vertical for more than 3 decades. And it's our passion for supporting mental health that's driven us to connect to other verticals, like finance. I wanted to set up why we're here today. Every May, as part of Mental Health Awareness Month, Cactus leads a series of conversations with a variety of brands around the importance of mental health and to hear about how they engage and embrace the conversation. Today, we're excited to be talking with Ted Rossman from Bankrate. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Great. Ted, why don't you share with our listeners a bit about yourself, your background, and Bankrate's research connecting financial health and mental health?
Sure. I'm a senior industry analyst at Bankrate. We're a personal finance website that helps people with everything from saving more to paying off debt, investing for retirement, all that good stuff. My childhood dream was to be a sports announcer, so I joke that going on TV and talking about money is the next best thing. But I genuinely do like personal finance. It affects all of us, and happy to hopefully help people manage their money a little bit better.
Yeah, that sounds great. Why don't you tell me a little bit about the research that you guys have recently conducted around mental health and financial health?
We did a survey about money and mental health, and we found that about half of US adults, 47%, say that money is impacting their mental health negatively, at least occasionally. And that was more than any other factor. We asked about your health, we asked about the health of those around you, we asked about relationships, we asked about current events. There are a whole bunch of things on the list. Money was the number one stressor, which is not really surprising. Money is very personal to all of us. We know, sadly, it's one of the leading sources of conflict and divorce. And especially the past few years with inflation being so high, that's been the biggest money stressor. We got a level deeper and we said, okay, within the money category, what specifically is it that's worrying you? Inflation and the cost of living bubbled to the top of the list, closely connected to things like everyday expenses. It was other things that came a little further down the list, things like debt payoff and investing. It's really primarily a cost of living and a day-to-day expenses kind of story.
That's interesting. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And, certainly finances are something that can feel like a source of continual stress in even normal times, much less periods like the current economic environment. So as a senior industry analyst, what are the key financial stressors currently impacting individuals' mental well-being, and what practical steps can be taken to manage those finances in today's environment?
It's primarily meeting those daily, weekly, and monthly bills. It's really the near-term stuff. People are not as concerned about longer-term priorities like saving for retirement and paying off debt. Now, that's important too, but for a lot of people, it's more kind of put one foot in front of the other. How are we going to pay the rent this month? How are we going to pay for groceries? Worries are highest among women and Gen Xers. So generally speaking, the older you get, the more worried you are about money, up until baby boomers. They're actually feeling better. So there's maybe a silver lining. Many boomers are retired. They're feeling a bit more financially secure. But unfortunately, people in their 50s are feeling worse than people in their 40s, who are feeling worse than people in their 30s and 20s, and so on. The good news is there are some things that you can do. It depends what the issue is. If it's needing to save more for the proverbial rainy day, it's a good idea to have money transferred from every paycheck into a dedicated savings account, kind of like you might be doing with retirement. Out of sight, out of mind can be a good thing. Just have those automatic transfers. Connected to that would be setting a good budget, looking through your income, your expenses. I'm a big fan of combing through credit card statements and bank statements and really seeing where your money is going. And I know money's tight for a lot of people and it may feel like there's only so much you can cut, but maybe there are duplicate subscriptions or free trials that turned into paid subscriptions or things that you're not necessarily using or valuing. You could take on a side hustle to free up more money for savings and expenses. Actually, more than a third of Americans have a side hustle. And on average, they're bringing in about $900 a month. That can go a long way towards meeting some of these financial priorities. And also, if you have a spouse, you've got to talk to them about money. It may not always be easy, but too often we see people kind of doing their own thing and squirreling money away and spending in secret. It's important to get on the same page.
That's great. The beginning of that conversation, you talked a little bit about sort of the perceptions, and certainly in our own work with financial brands, we know that people can suffer from financial or money dysmorphia, which is really that simply distorted perception of their own financial situation. What methods can promote financial literacy, reduce stigma of financial struggles, and address the root cause of financial dysmorphia?
I am heartened that more states are introducing personal finance mandates in high school. It's about half of states now. I wish it was everybody. And even there, sometimes it's more of a cursory glance, but at least it's something. Because in the absence of that, we learn through the school of hard knocks, we learn from friends and family. Sometimes that's a good thing, sometimes that's not as good of a thing. A lot of people are getting their financial advice from social media right now, which does worry me. I mean, you don't know exactly where that advice is coming from. And personal finance is personal after all. It's not a one size fits all kind of thing. We are seeing a lot of Gen Zers taking more risks with their money. This is a notable difference between Gen Zers and millennials. Millennials were kind of famously risk averse, especially early in their adulthood. Gen Zers are kind of the opposite. They came of age around the pandemic time when people were getting stimulus money, they were bored at home, they were gambling on meme stocks and crypto and sports and other things. And we actually see Gen Zers have considerably more credit card debt than millennials did at the same age. And we know both of those generations have a lot of student debt. Credit card debt is definitely one to prioritize because the interest rates are so much higher than other forms of debt. And this really relates to our discussion about money and mental health because a lot of times people lose sleep over things like credit card debt. And it's very related to emergency savings because if you don't have the savings, then the next unexpected expense loads up the credit card. And maybe it's a medical bill or a car repair or a home repair. And it's just a vicious cycle. So that's where it is really important to practice those fundamentals of paying off the high cost debt, but also building savings. And you can do those things simultaneously. It's really kind of two sides of the same coin.
I have two older teens, and to hear, the sort of push for the understanding and financial literacy in schools and high schools is certainly near and dear to my heart. So anything that we can do to educate some of the younger generations is important. This is a little bit of a maybe a side tangent. I'm I'm fascinated by the use of terms like financial literacy, right? It's so difficult. Money feels so difficult for individuals. And then we throw out terms like financial literacy and money dysmorphia, making it even more confusing. I would love to get your sort of perspective on that and how you feel about how we talk to everybody about money issues and challenges.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, financial literacy, we're basically talking about understanding things like how interest works. I mean, that's a real eye opener for a lot of young adults in particular, where the average credit card rate is 20%. And if you only make the minimum payments every month, that is typically 1% of the balance plus interest. In other words, you're not making a lot of headway. So if you have the average credit card balance, which is about $6,600 according to TransUnion, if you make minimum payments at 20%, you're in debt for 18 years and you end up paying almost $10,000 just in interest. That is just staggering. On the flip side, another example of financial literacy would be understanding how compound interest can work for you with your investments, for example. When you have time on your side, if you're in your 20s, every dollar you set aside for retirement could be worth $40 or $50 by the time you retire. And that's just based on if you get a 10% average annual return, which is pretty much what the markets have returned historically. I know this is a lot of numbers, but think about it this way. If you're getting a 10% return, your money's doubling every 7 years. And the more of those doubling periods ahead that you have, the more advantageous that is. So you actually don't even need to invest a lot of money in your 20s to have it turn into a lot of money by your 60s or 70s. These are some of the kind of basics when it comes to hopefully owing less, saving and investing more, also just setting a good budget. I mean, that's a really important part of adulting. I know sometimes budget feels like a four-letter word. It feels like something we don't want to talk about. And it's just a way to deny yourself and like, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that. I would urge people to frame it more positively. In other words, what do you want to achieve with money and how are you going to get there? Do you want to buy a house in the next few years? Do you want to pay off your student debt? Do you want to maybe help your kids save for college, whatever your priorities are. Maybe it's even something like a vacation or a new car purchase. Try to frame it towards working in favor of that goal rather than denying something else.
I love that perspective. I think that's so important for mental health, is to have that sort of hope and positivity. So it's great, great perspective. To switch gears a little bit, creative campaigns can break through the clutter of everyday life and sometimes even drive culture. From your perspective, how can advertising campaigns be used to raise awareness about the connection between financial well-being and mental health and encourage support for both?
There's research that shows that if you're feeling good about your finances, you're going to be healthier. You're going to sleep better at night. I mean, it is something that has a really holistic effect on a lot of aspects of our lives. Mood, health, relationships, a lot of it is intertwined. It's important to know also that there are support resources out there, that if you're struggling with money, maybe there's a friend or family member that can help, or maybe you should turn to a financial professional. There's actually a growing school of financial therapists. There's some great nonprofit credit counseling agencies like Money Management International and Green Path that can really help people pay down debt. I like the idea also of framing things in the positive, as far as there is hope. It's not too late. Even if you have a lot of credit card debt, some of those nonprofit credit counseling agencies, they specialize in helping people pay off 10 or 20 or $30,000 in credit card debt. Like, it may feel like a big mountain, but when you split it up into monthly installments and you get a lower interest rate, and you can make progress. One of the biggest things that actually makes us feel better about things is when we feel like we're taking some of the control back and we have a plan, we're making progress against it. Something like a 0% balance transfer card for credit card debt payoff, or taking on a side hustle, or just starting those biweekly transfers into a savings or investment account. Once you feel like you're moving in the right direction, that can snowball in a good way. That's actually one of the debt payoff methods. People even call it the snowball method. The idea that you pay off your smallest debts first, and then, like that snowball rolling downhill, you gain momentum and you feel more motivated. And that can just really brighten the whole mood and make it feel more attainable to take on the next one and the next one.
Excellent. Before we wrap up, is there anything that I didn't ask that I should have, or other advice that you'd like to share?
Let me think. I would just again say that there are resources out there. There's help out there, whether it's nonprofit credit counseling or someone close to you. We also do a lot of research into financial infidelity. We see a lot of people are hiding money and debt from their spouse. That's not a good thing. It's important to be open. I generally find that people are forgiving, but it's better to know sooner rather than later, and just really frame this more in the positive. What do we want to work towards together? How are we going to get there? There are lots of people who've walked in these shoes before you when it comes to saving more, spending less, paying off debt. Really just working on those fundamentals. Personal finance doesn't need to be overly complicated. It's actually kind of a series of small, repeatable decisions that sometimes, if you automate them, that can also help with the process, like automatic savings and investments and debt payoff efforts, and really just kind of stay the course. I feel like within 6 months, most people can make meaningful progress against a lot of these goals.
That's great. Well, I really appreciate hearing your perspective on mental health and finances. Thank you so much for your time and insight. Take care.
Of course, thanks for having me.